talkelpaso.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go, like hiking, canoeing, fishing, or camping. Or create your own adventure with family and friends, and you might just see this. Your moment's out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Got people already assembling over there, dropping those comments and those likes and reacts we do appreciate, such as Ida Beza Gardner. Hello, and wave to you as well as those dropping again those likes over on the Facebook. James Holmes, Robbie Flores, Ida Beza Gardner, and Monica Cervantes. It's not required, but it helps with all those algorithmic things as we continue our mission to have, well, live local talk radio here in the borderland. And a lot of topics. I hope you all had a restful weekend. I kind of did. Thanks for seeing those out there, including at least one familiar name. I'll let him decide in the comments if he wants to not exactly out himself. He was performing in public, but if you want to mention that we saw each other out there at the Star Western Wear Star Country Fiesta. It was a great time. So I'm a little less rested than I usually am, but we're definitely ready to delve into all the issues and things going on here in the borderland. Per our announcement post, if you follow us over on social media, you see a little sneak peek of what we're planning on talking about any given day. A lot, of course, still going on with the immigration response here in our area, with a lot of interesting situations and funding still being called for, even if the response is being called less visible right now. Let y'all be the judge of that. Ed Clore there posting it out there. Ed Clore definitely did see him do some very interesting work on stage there with the Borderline Band out there at the Fiesta. So great to see you, and glad you made it through the night there all right as well. It was it was a good time out yesterday. Great weather for it, thankfully, so not ending up being too brain fried, as we also have Edgar Ortiz on board with us here as well. So besides those parts of the legal response we're going to be talking about involving the immigration and border security issues that have been front and center here locally, some of the other, I guess, not exactly backburnered, but easy to fall off of immediate notice, including some very interesting action coming out of El Paso County Commissioner's Court today involving the legal fees for the district attorney, particularly in the removal case. We'll delve into that a little bit further here. Also, as we also have George Zavala joining us over on the Facebook there. Afternoon to you as well. Also, a new roadmap for road work coming to our area. The redefined, roughly $800 million state transportation plan. Now, that does not necessarily mean that all that money is available already, which is part of the complication, but setting for the, I've been calling it for roughly about the past 5 years that it was going to take about 15 years to get through all of the projects that are pending, the major ones that are, we've already seen some of the beginning work happening with roadways. So anyone out there on the roads right now listening to us and thinking about how wonderful the experience is, I'm really curious to know where you're driving if you truly think it's wonderful, but at the very least, if you don't abjectly hate it, appreciate while you got it, because again, the next 10 years at the very least is defined by this now continuing on plan is going to put on a lie. I remember when I first moved back to town was seeing one of those kind of tongue-in-cheek signs about how the state flower of Texas was now the construction cone, the state tree, the barrel, the state motto, men at work or end road work. Protest signs that never seem to work, don't they? Because road work never ends. In any case, we're definitely going to be back in stock for that. If you say breathe a sigh of relief when they started finishing up some of that Loop 375 work, either with the ramps over on Joe Battle or the Border Highway West extension, I'm going to need you to get ready to hold that breath again, because we got a whole another slew of them, and some of the ones I've been telling you about, but it always feels a little bit different once you start seeing it on paper, don't you? So, a few of the things we got discussing here today. A couple of the other ones that I might want to squeeze into if we can here is a couple of more, I mean, a lot of these are fairly bureaucratic and registration and regulation based, but some maybe changing regulations for the City of the Crosses, our neighbors just to the north, when it comes to marijuana sales. Yeah, we haven't checked on that in a minute, but also maybe a little bit more on what the heck is going on with electric rates, even with the rate cases and those considerations going on. So, quite the stacked schedule for us today, and maybe even some mention of elections going on, some latest polling numbers coming in to the newsroom as of the start of this week, including some very interesting, shall we say, endorsements going on here. RJ on the roads there saying, it reminds me of Dallas or Chicago, the land of never-ending construction. We're getting closer to it here. If anyone really appreciated, just the time I went away to college and came back, the roads and the amount of people on them, more specifically, were so drastically different here in El Paso. And honestly, all of the projects that are going on right now, besides simply setting the stage for what's going to be going on with I-10, yeah, there's a lot. There's also the fact that all of this should have happened probably 20 years ago, but that's what happens when you're the corner of the state that's closer to the Pacific Ocean than you are the Gulf of Mexico. Tends to get a little overlooked out here. So hopefully we're not going to end up being the land of perpetual construction. I'm just saying, I wish I'd also bought a helicopter about 5 years ago and gotten really proficient with it right about now, because I'm sure I could have built up some kind of helipad on the top of our building here. There was one, at least I'm not imagining it, there was one on the, I don't remember the name of the building, but it's the one that if you go on I-10, basically through central El Paso, that had kind of that corrugated roof. It had a bunch of consecutive peaks on it that someone put a helicopter landing pad on top of, and I could swear I saw that helicopter fly at least a couple of times. It was a kind of a yellow turbine engine, not a turbine, piston engine looking thing here, as well as have Eric von Holstein-Rathlau joining us over there. All I'm saying is that I was very envious of that concept and was wondering how I might apply it to my own life, since flying cars seem about as likely as any of the other stuff from the Jetsons, at least for the moment. I'm not going to hold my breath about it, but maybe like kind of grandkids territory might actually be able to get one. So let's delve into some of those big issues here. El Paso County Judge speaking with both at Commissioner's Court and from the reporting from our news partners there at KFOX 14, saying that there are continuing to be coordination between local, federal, and all of the issues in between it to deal with the surge, the immigration issues that we've been going for better part of the last month at this point. And some of the points being made, particularly by County Judge Ricardo Samaniego, is that sure, things may not be as still present on the streets due to some of the other efforts, hotel rooms, etc., that there's still going to be a need for funding, still specifically saying the county still plans on opening its processing center despite the number of migrants in the streets having decreased significantly, because that has not slowed down the amount of releases. Just essentially, if we're going to continue with that, I need to come up with a better one, but it's the best visual I can come up with, as I think also Andrew has been bringing up what has been going on with the RJ suggesting for my transportation issues, 20 drones and some helium balloons. I think some guy did that back with just a lawn chair, and didn't he end up going into restricted airspace and nearly blown out of the sky? I'm not, given the amount of airspace issues we have around here, maybe not that. But again, Ricardo Samaniego and the county's efforts still pretty much being focused on dealing with the influx. As I mean, from the county side of things, there's not a whole lot of, say, border enforcement that can be done, even if there are some interesting state level efforts. Still not terrifically aware of any of those. Operation Lone Star, what Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been a part of and putting forth, has really been present, those level efforts here in town. Get those releases, see what they do, talking about it, and a lot of discussion on boats, patrols, etc., and even fencing in some areas. Not a lot of which is terrifically applicable here. Maybe the patrols, but boats, on a good day, maybe in the Rio Grande, but otherwise not exactly. And more fencing, sure, on the outskirts, and frankly, the New Mexico side of it would be the best focus, which would be completely outside the scope of the Operation Lone Star response. So it's still pretty much, to my understanding, anyone else have heard differently, correct me if I'm wrong, that Operation Lone Star not really being a part of. So that's why I said state not state, but local and federal response continuing on. So those releases still going on. So again, continuing with that whole faucet and bucket analogy, getting better at the bucket line, even if the faucet is still going on unabated. And those are some of the issues as we get into the start of this week. San Diego also saying that FEMA will reimburse the county for the cost the county does incur for the current crisis that we are encountering, assuming some of that will probably go towards the processing facilities that are being considered over near the El Paso County Coliseum. And a very interesting perspective, specifically one direct quote from San Diego from, again, the meeting today, quote, El Paso has become a very attractive as a processing center, but not attractive as a place to stay or shelter or live here in El Paso. The 350 refugees that have come here, not even a point percentage want to stay in El Paso because they want to go to the larger communities. And that's part of, we had some of the discussion last week as well, including perspective from the mayor, of course, Oscar Leeser, saying that they're coming to America, not to El Paso, in which, yes, there are some finer points to be made about El Paso is absolutely a part of America. But I get kind of the concept there that it's still that pass through, and even some more interesting situations being reported on further by our news partner, including at least one El Paso family. I know it's often put as kind of a rhetorical point, saying, are you letting them into your homes, of people who are of differing perspectives on this issue? At least one family did do so. It does look like literally hosting migrants in her own home and helping them get the funding and essentially a bit of temporary work is what it seems like in order to finance their continued movement out of town. So that still seems to be the crux of the focus here, and why the real sticking point has been on the inability to move out of town because of I know the term sponsor keeps getting used and it sounds almost formalized, like it's a program, when all we're really talking about when the term the youth sponsor is, to my understanding, is that there's someplace, some contact they have that they are intending to move forward to, and lacking that, well, that's what you see for the last few weeks here. That's going to take us well through past our first break of the hour right now. We got a lot more to talk about, a lot more situations. Didn't even really touch on what is going on for the district attorney herself, not even just for the office, and what the county commissioner's court decided on her legal fees. Semi-reminiscent of previous cases, including previous guests we've had on the show, but we'll get to that here in just a bit, including more, again, on what's going to be going on with the roads. That now 6-figure, not quite, nine-figure, not quite 10-figure number, but, well, you can see it from here. Get into all that and a whole lot more after this break. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in over on the social media. Keep getting to those. Also, again, those likes and reacts we appreciate. Phone lines open a little bit later in the program, as we usually do. In any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Trowbridge, an accident is blocking the left lane. There's a minor backup there. Gateway North at McCombs, an El Paso fire truck is blocking the right lane as they deal with an incident. I-10 eastbound at Geronimo, there's a crash on Geronimo northbound at the 10 Gateway. Police and fire on the scene. Gateway East at Joe Battle, there's a box in the right lane. Stay to the left. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
One of the most misunderstood times in American history is the Salem witch trials. While Arthur Miller's The Crucible has tainted our view, we'll bring you the honest look at what really happened. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Here's my card.
I order takeout, use my card. And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low fixed-rate credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream from $5,000 to $100,000 and pay off those credit card balances. Apply online, and you could get your money as soon as the day you apply. The average credit card company charges over 19% APR, but with Lightstream, you can get a fixed rate as low as 5.73% APR with autopay and excellent credit.
Now I can pay off my high-interest credit cards and save money with a much lower rate.
Apply today at lightstream.com/radio and get an additional interest rate discount. That's lightstream.com/radio. Lightstream.com/radio.
Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 5.73% APR to 19.99% APR and includes 0.5% autopay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/radio for more information.
The podcast In Trust,
tells the story of a system that stripped oil and land wealth from the Osage Nation, dollar by dollar, acre by acre, over the course of a century, and how the Osage Nation is working to get it back.
I don't get it. I don't understand why the management of these resources is kept a secret from the beneficiaries.
Listen to In Trust on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every search you make, every click you take, they'll be watching you.
Are you tired of being tracked online? There's a simple solution. DuckDuckGo. It's an all-in-one privacy app with a built-in private search engine, web browser, one-click data clearing, email protection, and more, all for free. Download the app today and get the most comprehensive privacy protection with the push of a button. DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, even at this point. None of those phone lines open just yet. Will here in just a little bit. But of course, those comments coming in over on the social media, including some of those dubious transportation tricks. Okay, I've seen some of the concepts for the actual like man transporting drones out there, and it's either they got you kind of like perched above it, like you're kind of in a motorcycle looking seat kind of thing, but then you got all the blades like around you, which that just sounds like a bad plan should anything go wrong, or this really kind of ungallant situation of you kind of slung below it. That may be more of a rescue concept I've seen, but still, there's some work to be done with these concepts. If anyone's seen it, there was this old, I do mean old, U.S. Army concept for like a single person helicopter thing where you were standing on it in kind of a control platform, almost looking like a pogo stick kind of thing, and the blades swirling around below you. And I guess I feel the same way about that for a lot of these concepts so far. So I'm not going to be doing my investment just yet into electric personal air travel, but who knows? Technology is always getting better, knock on wood, hopefully, and doesn't crash through our roof. That'll be the next real thing, is when one gets lost and goes through someone's roof. Every event I've been out lately, and I do mean everyone, including the one this weekend, there's been drones, multiple of them, in fact, which is raising some questions for me, actually, because I know that there is now the processing, have known people who have gone through the actual process to get certified FAA to be able to do the commercial drone flights, and I thought there was a thing about populated areas or populated events anyway, so there's a lot of maturity needed before I'm going to do that. I guess I feel kind of a similar way to like the 1990s VR craze when they had like gloves and big bulky goggles. I've actually got one of the newer machines on that was from, well, now it's owned by Meta, which I feel a way about, but it's pretty seamless, pretty simple, but it's a lot more mature technology. So I guess I'm waiting for that level of maturity of this before I'm going to go whole hog into anything that is regularly lifting me off the ground that I didn't win the lottery to be able to buy. Probably will still take that at this point. In any case, talking about monetary costs and, well, money being sought for it in a completely different way, District Attorney Yvonne Rosales appearing via video before El Paso County Commissioner's Court today, discussing the legal representation and fees for DA Rosales' citation to be removed from office. Now, again, citation, petition, we're using those phrases in the judicial sense, not in the what you get when you go and make a bad parking error, or what you can sign, all the different ones we've been talking about in that ray. But so what we're talking about there specifically is, of course, going on with her removal from office, that legal petition, as in petitioning the court that has come out from this, and El Paso County commissioners, that she was asking, again, Rosales was asking County Commissioners Court there to take up the discussion in the executive session, specifically due to concern over employees in her office. And of course, this does involve El Paso County Attorney Joanne Bernal. They advised the court that if discussion is taken up on executive session, it could be considered a violation of the Open Meetings Act, according to our news partners over there at KFOX 14. So this is, well, a very interesting situation. And again, smacks ever so slightly of a previous one and a previous guest that we had on last week that has been kind of involving himself in this situation. John Cook, of course, that's the best example I can actually think of when it comes to a previous local elected official that ended up getting legal issues related to their position of office. Now, this was someone saying like, well, I had a fender bender with someone, and so therefore the county or the city or whatever entity we're talking about should defend me. No, this is directly related to their performance and their duties in office. I'll freely admit that much. So her asking for it here, just a quote from her directly again from our coverage there from our news partners at KFOX 14, what Rosales said is, quote, I am also paid by the county. I am entitled to the county's benefits due to the conflicts that are blatantly apparent. This is reasonably necessary. I am requesting my defense be paid for by the county funds. I do represent victims who reside in the county, and I am fulfilling my duties as a member of the county of El Paso. I'm asking that the defense of the litigation be placed in an equal position as the prosecution as in economic resources, as both offices are equal in status with the county employment structure. And Samaniego, again, in the turn down of this, did recommend to Rosales that the return to the court with an estimated cost. But some of the numbers that have been put forth, specifically, Rosales did put the numbers potentially at $150,000 to $200,000 because of the extent of, again, this civil litigation. And county commissioners voted again on Monday to not pay for Rosales' legal fees in the case. Now, as I've been saying a lot of times on this and related to this whole story and situation, that we have, of course, reached out to the district attorney's office. And in this case, we have as well regarding to these, did get a response back in this case that is, I'll say, just personally disappointing, but essentially heard from a spokesperson for the office is saying that while all of these things are pending, both the removal petition and those court proceedings, and of course the gag order related to the August 3rd case, that there is not going to be any public response coming or other, even otherwise statements, except for maybe specific, but the filings will speak for themselves, is what essentially I was told. So basically boiling it down, I'm not going to be holding my breath about getting the district attorney on this program in order to discuss these things. Still an open standing invitation. Make that perfectly clear, because would love to be able to speak with her, or frankly, again, anyone from the audience, from the office, to speak to our audience about these issues. But we will, of course, have to wait and see when it comes to that, and we'll keep you updated on any of the petitions or otherwise appearances. I think the best we're going to do so. So basically what we're waiting for next in this case here and in the situations on the removal from office. Again, just to list out some of the issues we've been discussing lately, we have had, among other things, the petitions to remove and dismissals of cases that have been granted in the, again, not quite 1,000 by my count, unless we've seen an updated total out here now, of misdemeanor to low-level felony cases so far being sought by the public defender's office. And of course, the response that has been received previously from the district attorney's office has been that there have been some cases being refiled. And we talked about a little bit about some of those stats last week. And again, in relation to Mr. Cook, former mayor, El Paso Mayor John Cook. But now, of course, when this petition for removal, that the court proceeding that has been moving forward, again, County Attorney Joanne Bernal would be the prosecuting or the one dealing with the petition in this case. I'm not quite sure, because this is a civil proceeding, prosecutorial terms apply in this case, but they will have the decision to be made within 10 days of how they will proceed from this. I think the most recent thing that has come out publicly anyway is that Bernal did ask the court where this has been filed if there will be what the instructions to her office essentially should be. And then, of course, there is the August 3rd case. As I mentioned, there is a gag order that has been put into place by, I believe it was Judge Sam Medrano, if I'm not mistaken, to be saying that there should be no public statements being made about that. So those are just a few of the issues going on and swirling around both this office and a whole lot more. So due for that next break here already. Again, you're tuned in for Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. A lot more that we're going to need to talk about. Coming up out of this next break, we'll be getting into, again, the road plan. I've hinted at it strongly, but what exactly is on the docket? What some of the clearer costs are? I've had a number in the back of my mind throughout most of this process, and it's getting closer to reality. It seems like it'll actually cost that, though, of course, the whole idea of 10-year plan and what inflation may do to that, well, those are maybe questions for a more in-depth thing, but we'll talk about what that road situation plan is and how you might want to plan on getting your catapult ready or, moving downstairs from your work. Just saying. In any case, back with that and a whole lot more, maybe even what the City of the Crosses is considering doing with their marijuana dispensaries after this break here with News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 News Update. New Mexico State Police are investigating the deaths of 2 people in Las Cruces, one of who was an NMSU student. Authorities confirmed 20-year-old Emilia Rueda and 19-year-old Carlos Esparza were found dead inside a home on Alamo Street. Investigators say this appears to be a murder-suicide. We did reach out to the university Friday evening and learned that Rueda was an art student at NMSU. The Dean of Students released a statement saying, "We are deeply saddened to learn of the death of Emilia. Our Aggie community grieves her tragic loss. We send our heartfelt condolences to her family and all those who knew her." And leaders at Holloman Air Force Base are reporting that the death of one of their service members is now under investigation. The name of the airman has not yet been released. Colonel Justin Spears, the 49th Wing Commander, said, quote, "My heart goes out to all of the people who lost a friend and a loved one last night." I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
That earlier crash, I-10 eastbound at Trowbridge is cleared. All lanes are back open. Memorial Highway southbound at Montana Avenue. The exit's partially blocked because of a disabled vehicle on the right shoulder. And the right lane, the exit ramp, also blocked in the lower valley on Memorial Highway southbound at Pan American Drive. Heavy congestion there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the Forewarned Weather Center, this is CBS 4 weather forecaster Brady Brewster. Well, happy Monday, everyone. We're going to feel a little bit more like fall as we head into this work week. Daytime high is going to be right around normal into those mid-80s as daytime highs. This afternoon, slight chances of an isolated storm. In general, we are staying dry, a little bit breezy as well. Be sure to visit our website, cbs4local.com, for a full look at your forecast.
This report is sponsored by Blindster. Do you need new blinds or shades? Blindster.com offers custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters shipped directly to you at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are easy to install and guaranteed to fit. Don't overpay for new blinds. Shop today and save big. Blindster.com.
Employee onboarding?
Automated.
Customer support?
Automated.
What if you could automate all your company's routine operation tasks and do it easily?
Lead management?
Automated.
With Zapier, you can. Zapier is the leader in no-code automation. Connect over 5,000 apps, automate almost any workflow, and streamline your team's performance without hiring a developer and with no coding required. That's right. Zapier's templates make it simple for you to automate anything in minutes, no matter your level of expertise. Zapier eliminates routine tasks and frees your employees to focus on the bigger picture. And with Zapier's advanced security features and annual SOC 2 audits, your data is safe and secure. See why thousands of companies, including Slack, Salesforce, and HubSpot, trust Zapier to automate their businesses.
Even complex tasks?
Automated with Zapier.
Try Zapier for free today at zapier.com/radio. That's zapier.com/radio. Zapier.com/radio.
Tune in this Saturday, 10 to noon, for the El Paso History Radio Show on 690, brought to you in part by Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate, 915-585-7777. That's the El Paso History Radio Show, Saturdays at 10 on News Radio 690 KTSM.
One of the most misunderstood times in American history is the Salem witch trials. While Arthur Miller's The Crucible has tainted our view, we'll bring you the honest look at what really happened. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the very many social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can get at us here, a lot of different questions, comments, concerns that come in through there over on the social media right now. We do have our RJ on that YouTube page here as well. Eric Von Holstein-Rathlow, George Zavala, Edgar Ortiz, Ed Clore, Ida Beza Gardner, dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate Flaco Jimenez, Ed Clore, Esteban Bustillos, James Holmes, Robbie Flores, Ida Beza Gardner, and Monica Cervantes. You don't have to say something or like or comment or whatever you want to. But if you want to add your 2 cents, want to get involved with it, that's one of the ways you can do so throughout the program. We'll have that phone line open a little bit later here as well as we usually do so. RJ chiming in, sort of this segment here, saying, Cook standing up for Rosales was positively cringeworthy. He did her no favors. She became the DA and entered the beware of what you wish for stage of life here. It sounds like you're kind of maybe getting towards the phrase of mess around and find out, except the first word is definitely not mess the way it's usually said. And I know some of that kind of backseat armchair analysis has been going on there, but that's one of the reasons, again, standing open invitation for the district attorney or anyone from the office to come on here and talk about these issues. I'd like to think that we try to maintain our interviews in the way we do them in a pretty level-headed manner in order to get out the information, and then we all can talk about it. That's kind of our order of operations as it usually is. So I would think that would be a good way to at least talk about what's going on and give people the insight. Let me just put it this way. I have long said that the way I tend to judge public servants and elected officials is by their transparency, their willingness to be open to and available to the general public that they serve. And yes, there may be more technical aspects of a certain office like this than just being a glad-handing politician. Still, accountability to the public is more or less the reason that people end up voting for them. Well, at least it should be, in my mind anyway. So that's how I tend to vote to judge it. And transparency is never usually a bad thing. I mean, sure, there's good ways to manage things and bad ways to manage things, but at least being out there and in front of it for way, way too long in my limited-ish career in El Paso and talking with public affairs officials and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of, I guess, concept of turtling, and that if you just bury your head in the sand, pull back, close off all exits kind of thing, that it'll just go away. The amount of times that got told by people in not exactly elected official offices, but the people kind of gatekeeping on the, oh, that's not really a story. Oh, that just makes me want to talk about it more, bud. So if you think that's going to make it go away, I don't think that's been a factor here in town for a better part of the last decade, but certainly not these days. So that's why I'm saying, and my further way of kind of cajoling maybe, of saying that if you've got an issue, you got a problem, something that is affecting the office, and you're wanting to actually deal with and get people discussing about it, an influential phrase I think about here, it's more about branding, kind of a marketing thing, but it feels like it applies here as well, that if you don't think you have a brand, it just means you're not managing your brand. Take it to this situation, modify that slightly, say it as, if you don't think you have a PR response, it just means you're not in control of the PR response. In any case, it's just one of the many issues circulating around here, but want to talk about one that'll probably be affecting a decent amount of our listener base out there. El Paso Inc. reporting as of this weekend, the state transportation plan includes $800 million for El Paso. There's that, I guess maybe I said a little bit too cryptically, that 9 figures, not quite 10-figure number that is being pushed around for when it comes to what will be happening on El Paso roadways. And if you're wondering, how the hell are we going to spend that much money? I got 3, figures for you. I-10, I-10, so technically 4, I guess, if you include the dash. I-10 itself is the real focus and the real budget buster coming up for all of this. So for anyone who has not been paying attention here, which I'm going to need you to wake up a little bit for me, because knowing what's going on the roads and how that affects our transportation, we've talked about this a few times, and yet I still run into someone who's like, wait, what's going on with I-10 and the roads and how it's going to really sting to maybe get around parts of town? So for those on the, I guess what we're still now calling the northwest side, you've been encountering what's going on with the not shutdowns, but definitely interesting traffic patterns with the traffic shift to the right if you're anywhere near kind of the Wrestler North area where it's currently going through. But even if you're just like near the Mesa exit on the west side anyway from I-10, don't think this isn't going to come right to your front yard as well. okay, maybe not right front yard, but right through where you get to your commute to get to your front yard, because that portion of it is where the extent of the currently let project, so the currently underway project goes, but it goes much further than that. It doesn't stop there. I've said more than a few times that essentially there are plans either in the works or now underway in this own right for redoing I-10 throughout basically El Paso County. Maybe it'll technically go to like a Joe Bad a little bit further, East Lake now, as that's becoming a real hotbed in its own right. Essentially, I consider it a mirror of what's going on at the West Town Marketplace, the East Lake Marketplace, and all the stuff going on out there. Transportation is becoming an issue. And considering that I-10 has never had like serious roadbed maintenance since its creation, that's, let's just call it roughly 7 decades. You don't think roadway technology or how they build them has changed ever so slightly or needing to be like dealt with? You ever wonder why there are those who was noticing it on our way back from that event yesterday, actually, about the large strips of grass that exist on I-10 in some places? Yeah, that's not a green feature or intended as a feature. It is a result of the fact that there's a lot of work needing to be done, but shutting down I-10 itself, we have to, do a lot of things around it. So that's what all the other projects have been on, and now why we're going to start getting that there. So this is part of the state's layout of plans for about $85 billion in fundings for 7,000 Texas infrastructure projects over the next 10 years, according to El Paso Inc. So these are basically, if anyone's familiar with the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization that we exist here in town, that sets essentially the list of projects that want to be worked on, if not exactly going to start immediately. This is closer to that, but still we have a lot that are coming up very quickly here for El Paso. So again, El Paso ain't going on further even to report about 6 major projects. And that one that I'm really in is taking the lion's share of that, again, roughly $800 million being proposed for El Paso, that the segment 2, the downtown redevelopment of I-10, there's a bunch of different projects and ways it's being talked about, will be about that $70.5 million. Now, about half that funding hasn't been totally allocated yet or set up, but there's a lot more potentially coming with it. And so, yeah. I mean, other things, you've heard some of the other projects have been going on around this, separate from the TxDOT efforts, but the whole idea of the downtown deck, the expansion of the lanes, that is part of what would be going on with the TxDOT project. So if you think it's been a bit of a mess so far, I'm going to need you to really buckle up a lot more for me, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. No way you slice it. We could have the most perfect construction schedule ever, and you bet your buñuelos that it is still going to be one heck of a hassle. Growing pains, the nice way-ish to put it, but a whole lot more to come with that. And, of course, the frontage roads go between Executive and Sunland Park, which will be an interesting, again, 16.5, again, according to El Paso Inc. there. It'll be quite the time and a good time to, maybe a Zeppelin. Do we treat, a non-hydrogen Zeppelin anyway? We occasionally see the Goodyear blimps come here through town. So it's a possibility, definitely not hydrogen. I'm gonna say that pretty firmly. One other thing I want to mention here is also have Kathy Codry saying that El Paso is a prime example of insanity by definition of electing public servants that don't have the best interests of the citizenry. Liberal lefties are ruining our city. Again, I think people need to show up the polls to make that point be made, because sure, there's the whole conventional wisdom about the way the average voter here in El Paso is, but the average voter in El Paso has barely been to the polls themselves. They show up infrequently. The whole semi-joke I make about vote early and vote often. No, don't vote multiple times in one election, but vote in every election. I have sometimes woken up in a cold sweat at night with the idea that, oh my gosh, did I miss an election? Hasn't happened yet, knock on wood, but I dread the idea of me missing one. Anytime I find out about one that isn't like, say, being campaigned in my area, I'm still feel a little bit nervous that, wait, did I miss something? I know I'm weird that way, but still, I'd like for a little bit more weirdness in that category to be evident here in town so that we could maybe have more and different diversity on the ballot, and be even beyond that, not wanting to necessarily see a balance between R, D, G, B, whatever, on the ballot just for its own sake, but never wanting a local, particularly local elected official to be comfortable, to feel, nope, I've got to lock on this, I can do no wrong, and as long as I do not actively consume, commit cannibalism on TV, I should be fine. yeah, that's not the way this should work, but getting me back on my soapbox. One other thing I want to mention before we take that next break and open up those phone lines is we have, of course, talked infrequently, not a whole lot, about what's been going on with the whole cannabis situation that has developed here in the borderland. Not anywhere near the response that I was kind of thinking would be, particularly on the Texas side of things. It's been pretty well backburnered, or not front of mind anyway, with what's been going on with the law enforcement response on this side. So a lot of interesting movement happening, particularly in the city of Las Cruces, considering removing a requirement for cannabis businesses to keep a 300-foot distance between other cannabis shops and single-family residential areas. According to our news partners there at KFOX 14, who spoke with Las Cruces Mayor Ken Miyagishima, previous guest on the show here as well, that there's a proposal before the city in order to get rid of that, but that personally Miyagishima has some reservations. But the explosion of that within the city of the Crosses, even if it hasn't totally shown up a little bit closer to here, I mean, I think the people that I've spoken with that are going for the quick trip anyway to try and get that from the borderland area tend to be going to like the Chaparral area, which, okay, not that I'm exactly saying that I want to see more of it, but it does seem like if there was an interest in it, it seems like a missed opportunity for Sunland Park and Santa Teresa. But again, I'm not exactly in that business. But again, I was kind of expecting there to be like a side door pot store. No apologies to the state line if I'm stealing their concept or stealing their thunder with it. But I'm kind of surprised that didn't pop up in its own way. But some of these movements and possibilities on it will be we'll see what it is. And RJ mentioning in terms of my concept there, only Trump can shoot someone and be fine. Man, that's a statement I haven't thought about in a while, but an interesting one to be brought up here. The Fifth Avenue, I think it was mentioned in New York City. And Catherine Codry saying, Dave's not home, man. Again, it would be interesting the way to see this development continues or whether it be possible. Just don't like go to Las Cruces, buy some, and then think you're going to take a trip up to Albuquerque, because you're still going to run into those checkpoints, boys and girls. So in any case, stay safe and stay sober out there, particularly if you're on the roads, and pay attention as we continue looking at the changes with them. In any case, that's going to take us through that next break of this hour. Again, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. We will go ahead and open up those phone lines as we do at this point during the program daily. So that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the I-10 westbound at Executive Center Boulevard, a multi-vehicle accident is blocking the right lane. Stay to the left. Gateway north at McCombs. El Paso fire on the scene of an incident. It's blocking the right shoulder. Memorial Highway southbound at Montana Avenue, a stalled vehicle is partially blocking the exit ramp. And on Gateway east at Joe Battle Boulevard, the right lane partially blocked because of road debris. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Don't miss the energy savings event at Lowe's. Save energy and save money on select major appliances, including Whirlpool. Selection varies by location. Exclusions apply. Visit Lowe's.com for details. Valid through 9/28.
With so many real estate agents to choose from, how do you find the best one? Hi, it's Glenn Beck. One key is just looking for the investment that an agent is willing to make to get your home sold. Brian Birds with eXp Realty and his team have a marketing budget 25 times higher than the average agent's annual income. This means your home gets maximum exposure because it's marketed to the widest possible audience and gets you the highest possible sales price. Brian is so confident in his ability to sell your home fast and for more money that he's willing to put his own money on the line. If your home doesn't sell at the price and deadline you agree to, he'll buy it from you himself. You're not going to find another real estate agent in El Paso who is that invested in getting your home sold. He's the only one I'd call. Google Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S. Read over 400 five-star reviews, because I'm not the only one who knows you should call Brian Birds. Google Brian Birds or just check out brianbirds.com.
The United States had its biggest spike in murders ever recorded last year. That's according to a new report out from the FBI.
Across America, crime has exploded. Police officers killed in the line of duty, 28 in Texas alone. Here's what Beto O'Rourke had to say.
I really love that Black Lives Matters and other protesters have put this front and center to defund police forces.
That's right. Beto O'Rourke stands with groups that support defunding and dismantling the police. But it gets worse. Listen to this from Beto.
The criminal justice system is just part of a larger system rooted in slavery that is alive and well in this country today.
Defund the police, comparing criminal justice to slavery. That's Beto O'Rourke. He is too radical, too dangerous for Texas. And it's why Beto O'Rourke should never be governor of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
A big meeting went down this week, signaling the end of fiat currency as we know it, and a new system is being set up now. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to The Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, whether you're tuning in with us on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the very many social media pages we're up on these days: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Look for us on those platforms, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk, even if there may be some, let's just say, concerns I have recently been made aware of when it comes to the YouTube. But I'll tell you, we'll talk about that more next segment, because nothing pressing for the moment anyway, but might have to see some changes with the way we present it in some places. Don't worry, we're not doing anything different with our on-air signal, going anyplace else, doing anything besides what we always have, which is about talking about the issues that affect us here in the borderland. But, well, let's just say there's a reason we're on many different social media platforms. But tell you what, we'll get into the top of that at the top of the next hour here. So let's get to those phone lines right now. We do have, of course, the phone line open through the end of the program now, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking the call.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make a comment on something that Samaniego said on television, on the news on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
He indicated that we should see a positive impact of the illegal immigration regarding the processing centers and unaccompanied children's centers, that they create well-paid jobs compared to the rest of our community. So I wanted to talk about the human cost of those well-paid jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And the first, I'm going to talk about the unaccompanied centers. 45,000, and I know I've said it before, and I will say it forever, 45,000 unaccompanied minor children who pass through processing centers have been lost in our system by HHS. And we know that the majority of them, they've said, have been trafficked. The Black children will go into the sex industry and the Hispanics into the labor industry. And we've known that by the statistics I called in a couple of weeks ago. And we know that children are being recycled by the cartels at our border so that adults can get in. Some instances, we don't even know who we're turning the children over to. We don't know their sponsors. We've seen babies dropped over the wall and toddlers abandoned at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And regarding the center here in El Paso at Fort Bliss, I discussed the 2 complaints that were filed against the unaccompanied children's center. And I haven't been able to find online what the outcome of those were. But they complained about the filth, the malnutrition, the insufficient staff, the girls' monthly needs were not provided. They also talked about depression and anxiety attacks. And I want to talk about the human cost for those en route to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We know by accounts that women and children have been physically, emotionally, and sexually, and I want to say brutalized. They saw animals eating bodies. Gang members were terrorizing others in the caravan. And children have been abducted, and I don't know how anybody can put up with this. And the organs have been sold to the highest bidder. And the human smuggler that was interviewed said these children will never be free, whether or not their organs are taken out. And then we know that men, women, and children were buried in the trenches in Panama. The third one, human cost I want to talk about, is those that get here. How do we measure the psychological, the mental, and emotional trauma they endured? Some got here, and a young lady said she didn't even have the words to express what happened to her on the way here.
Mm-hmm.
Some have said that they were separated from their families. Some have said they have no relatives and no means to get anywhere. And today in New York City, we heard that there were fights between the homeless and the illegal immigrants in the shelters.
Mhm.
The homeless are upset that they're being relocated to make room for the illegal immigrants that are coming in. I mean, is it unrealistic to think that it was a matter of time before these conflicts between the poor and the destitute would happen? I think we need to look further on down the road and see that that's likely to continue. And then I want to talk about our Border Patrol. These are hard-working, dedicated men and women, but they've been demoralized and exhausted. My question to our leaders is, who fights for their dignity? Shouldn't that be our city and our county? I mean, they're here to protect our border, and that's not happening because of our leaders. And then finally, I want to push back on Judge Samaniego, who said that the government creates jobs. Well, the government has never and never will create jobs. It doesn't create its own wealth. It depends on our tax dollars, and government uses our money to expand government. Without our tax dollars, there's no government, and there's very little that they can do. Government needs citizens to exist. On the other hand, you've got the private sector. We invest our profits, and we create more jobs, and we grow the economy. And that's totally different than the federal government or our city and county. They don't create jobs. They use our money to expand because they don't have their own wealth. Finally, I want to say to Judge Samaniego, he is wrong, he's callous, and he's thoughtless to suggest that money can trump human misery. Is totally discounting everything I just told you for the sake of a job that pays well in our community. He needs to be voted out. Who can be so short-sighted and be caught in such a bubble that he can't see beyond our borders, that he can't expand what's happening in our community? And it's not here, it's global. It's global. These people are suffering, and all he's thinking about is let's open more centers because they'll pay good-paying jobs. Well, how many good-paying jobs will the city and the county have to create to even get close to our tax dollars that are being wasted on illegal immigration? The money that's going to Washington that's coming back, they're waiting for payment, it's going to take 9 months. I mean, this is ridiculous. We have got to vote Guadalupe Hened and Blanca Trout into our county government. These people who have no sympathy for the misery that they are creating, that they are advocating, and they condone is a shame. It's a shame to our community. And if El Paso doesn't wake up, this is going to continue. I mean, it's not going to be long before things like New York are happening in El Paso. We need to be careful, and we need to have our eyes open. El Paso, please wake up.
I definitely encourage people to go out and vote and pay attention to those issues here. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be impossible for El Paso to end up like the situations in New York. I think we're better equipped for them just because we've been dealing with them longer. And again, that mild amount of schadenfreude that comes along with it, the idea of them saying, how could we possibly deal with this? You know, the busloads that are happening when that has been happening every day along sectors of our border, and particularly right here for quite a long time here. So tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll talk further about these issues you brought up here, get to more of the comments, more of the calls, more of everything we do at this point during the program. Again, if you want to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the I-10 westbound at Executive Center Boulevard, a multi-vehicle accident is blocking the right lane. Stay to the left. Gateway North at McCombs. El Paso Fire on the scene of an incident. It's blocking the right shoulder. Memorial Highway southbound at Montana Avenue. A stalled vehicle is partially blocking the exit ramp. And on Gateway East at Joe Battle Boulevard, the right lane partially blocked because of road debris. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free. at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter,
News on the hour
smartest way
and the
to
half.
hire.
Traffic
right
and
now,
weather
you can
all
try
day.
ZipRecruiter
News
for
Radio
free.
690
That's right,
is
free
KTSM
at
AM El Paso, an
ZipRecruiter.com/.
iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Hurricane Ian is gaining strength with a bullseye on Florida. The National Hurricane Center says Ian is now a Category 2 hurricane and is currently predicted to strike the west coast of Florida or the Florida Panhandle by Thursday. Governor Ron DeSantis says people should be prepared for power outages and considerable amounts of rain.
I think that that's something that people should expect. And depending on the severity of the storm, those power outages can be lengthy. It may not just be one day where you're out of power. So prepare for that. Understand that that's something that's a possibility.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is dipping into bear market territory as stocks tumbled to start the week. The S&P 500 posted a new closing low for 2022 as global recession fears rattled markets. A surge in interest rates and a falling British pound also weighed on investor sentiment. Authorities in Northern California have a suspect in custody who's accused of preparing to carry out a Las Vegas-style mass shooting. Dallas Marsh was arrested near a motel on Sunday in Chico, about 90 miles north of Sacramento. He was making threats to kill specific people prior to his arrest. The White House's student loan debt forgiveness plan will cost about $400 billion over 10 years.
A new estimate by the Congressional Budget Office also found that extending the current pause will cost $20 billion. The Biden administration announced last month it would cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for borrowers making under $125,000 per year or Pell Grant recipients. I'm Lisa Taylor.
A man seen on video punching a flight attendant in the back of the head is being ordered held in custody pending federal charges. Alexander Lee of Westminster, California, is accused of attacking the worker on a flight from Mexico to Los Angeles. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Americans will be allowed to enter Canada again without showing proof of COVID-19 vaccinations starting this weekend. That's after Canadian officials announced border measures would end October 1st. Those rules previously included proof of vaccination along with COVID testing prior to or upon arrival north of the border. Wearing a face mask on planes and trains will also no longer be mandatory once the rules go away. One New Jersey neighborhood is trying to stop Netflix from bringing a new production facility to their area. Lisa G. reports.
A group of residents from Fort Monmouth are skeptical of the streaming giant's promise, along with Governor Murphy's promise of a jobs and economic boon to their neighborhood once the facility opens. The group is called No to Netflix. While one member says film studios have a history of fleeing a location once someone else offers them more money and tax breaks.
The University of Richmond in Virginia is changing the name of its law school. Kathy White explains.
The University of Richmond is distancing itself from the man its law school is named after. School officials announced last week the law school will no longer be named for T.C. Williams because he owned slaves. The university's board voted unanimously to rename the T.C. Williams School of Law to the University of Richmond School of Law. Williams served as a trustee in the late 1800s, and after his death, his family created an endowment that led to the law school's development.
The NFL is confirming Rihanna will be headlining the Super Bowl halftime show next year. On Sunday, Rihanna shared an Instagram post with just her tattooed arm in the air, holding a football with the NFL shield. The league followed up with a tweet with the same picture. Super Bowl 56 takes place at State Farm Stadium on February 12th, 2023 in Glendale, Arizona. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
The biggest stars in all of music share the stage at our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
A stallion.
It's your girl Megan Thee Stallion.
A pitbull.
Mr. 305.
A couple of Combs.
Luke Combs. Sean Diddy Combs.
A couple of legends.
Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
The Black Keys.
Black Eyed Peas.
LL.
Cool J.
MM. Maren Morris. And MM.
Marcus Mumford.
She. Avril Lavigne.
Lionel Richie.
And them.
Sam Smith.
Halsey.
Our iHeartRadio Music Festival, brought to you by Capital One.
Coming to the CW October 7th and 8th.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
A big meeting went down this week, signaling the end of fiat currency as we know it, and a new system is being set up now. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sisters of the Underground is a podcast about the real-life story of the Mirabal sisters, Dominican women who led a revolution against Rafael Trujillo, the brutal dictator who ruled the Dominican Republic for 30 years. From executive producers Dania Ramirez and myself, Eva Longoria, comes a podcast featuring an inspiring story of Latina empowerment that deserves to be told. Listen to Sisters of the Underground on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
iHeartRadio Icons with John Mellencamp, an unforgettable live music event direct from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland for the unveiling of the new permanent exhibition, Legends of Rock and Roll, John Mellencamp. Join iHeartRadio's Jim Kerr for the unveiling, followed by a live performance from John Mellencamp inside the Hall of Fame, and a special tour announcement you won't want to miss. iHeartRadio Icons with John Mellencamp. Listen with the free iHeartRadio app, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific.
Tired of the news about how everything is costing more?
Everything is stubbornly high.
Us too. That's why we made the iHeartRadio app absolutely free. When you download the free iHeartRadio app, you have radio stations you love at your fingertips whenever you want, wherever you want, along with millions of podcasts from the news you crave to the true crime series you can't resist. Playlists to fit any mood or activity. And here's the part you don't want to miss. It's all free. Download the free iHeartRadio app and discover music, radio, and podcasts you'll love.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of commentary coming in those ways. We'll delve into a little bit more of that. Of course, we do those phone lines open as well. We usually do during this point during the program. Number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. That number we got up here on screen for you if you're looking over on our social media. But those commenting over there, we got Kathy Code, Remarky Mandingo, RJ, Barbara Carrasco, Josh, Eric Von Holstein Rathlow, Flaco Jimenez, Maria Kallman, and a whole lot more. George Zavala, Edgar Ortiz, Ed Clore, and Ida Beza Gardner. Driving those likes and reacts, we do appreciate. Simple way to put it here. Alex Campos, Flaco Jimenez, Ed Clore, Esteban Bustillos, James Holmes, Robbie Flores, Ida Beza Gardner, Monica Cervantes, and Carla Sierra. Appreciate y'all. It helps with those algorithmic things, particularly since, just as a note for y'all, over on the YouTube part of our stream, we got our first warning as part of it. Now, I guess we kind of had this idea that the way we talk about things, but then when we take the comments in from the general audience, could affect some platforms, which is one of the reasons we're on so many of them. So if that continues, we're going to be appealing that because it is a public discussion about things. And so by saying that essentially the way they're treating it is that anything put on there is treated as you are presenting the information as opposed to like discussing it. So essentially, I'm going to try to push back and say, so we're not allowing debate of issues and saying that people who have certain viewpoints are just supposed to be silenced and not like have it discussed and consensus built. I'm not going to hold my breath on that working out. So the option we've come up with, if this does continues, because once we start accumulating strikes, which would be the next step, we might have to, and I do believe means someone's reporting us, because I don't think YouTube is just seeking those out, unless it's that aggressive on certain subjects that affect us here in the borderland these days. We might have to no longer have the live call-in sections up over on some of our social media pages. So we're going to do our level best to see our way through it, but it is what it is at a certain level. But some of the comments coming in here are actually Flaco Jimenez saying, wasn't aware of the event until Andrew was there posting live. Wish he had told us about it earlier. I might have planned on attending. It was kind of a last-minute pinch hitting situation here, and try not to like cross apply, because as I was posting about it on the Andrew J. Polk page, not on the Talk El Paso page, because it was a 96.3 KA country event. I do fill in over there on occasion, and particularly for events. So tell you what, if we know something's going on that I'll be out at, we've sometimes hinted at or threatened to have meetups, and I was pleasantly surprised to see Ed there. I had no idea before that point that he was a member of one of the bands that would be performing, but I'll try to let you know. Absolutely. Maria Coleman saying a little bit earlier that I tend to think that recent developments with immigration spending, the DA debacle, may have a positive turn. Citizens might take interest in local elections and turn out to vote. I'll admit that I've had certain extra thoughts, particularly if you take it in kind of the vein of thought of all publicity is good publicity. I mean, maybe not for the people involved in this case, but sure, the idea of people thinking like, wait, what's going on? It maybe just being jolted out of complacency on it. I've had a similar thought here. I wish it wouldn't have taken this much, but we'll see what happens with this midterm. I mean, it may not happen this time around. I'll just put that, because midterms, non-presidential elections tend to see less turnout of the little turnout we see anyway. So I'm not going to hold my breath to say that we're going to have a real barn burner, everyone out, everyone going to the polls, but I can hope. And maybe these things tend to happen over time, gradually, glacially, it feels like sometimes, because no one makes the decision to or to not vote overnight, usually, at least not population-wise. It takes a lot of individuals making that decision. So if we can move the needle at all, and if this is another jolt to it, hey, I'll take it, even if, a lot of stuff going on here. Josh commenting a little bit earlier saying 300 to 400,000 children since Biden was elected. No way. Wonder if there is 100,000 plus moms in Mexico taking for missing kids. A sick country of sick people preying on children. Honestly, that last part of your comment there hits pretty hard, because the idea of the fact that of the trafficking, all that stuff coming, I know there's some argument to be made about, well, it's available, so therefore people are preying on it. But for the most part, whenever we talk about situations like this, or also when we talk about drugs, illicit, any of them, the importation of it, the United States, then this, I don't think it's focused on enough. The United States is a ravenous, and I do mean absolutely brutally ravenous market for this kind of thing. I don't mean you. I don't mean me. I don't mean probably anyone that you know and talk to, or at least that you know about, because these are things not publicly talked about. But the simple fact of the matter is that it does exist here, and it's not just, one person taking up all this demand. It's a lot of people. So that's concerning in its own right. Some more of the comments here in relation to what Barbara had to say. RJ saying, now hiring federal jobs, process immigrants, and place children with unvetted sponsors, no background checks, concierges and travel agents should apply. The whole system of the migration that we're seeing here, because we're talking about migration patterns when we start talking about this level of it. There's, I think, this maybe idea of the way it's looked in eras gone by. Like, I've even heard some allusions to the Oregon Trail, Conestoga wagons. I'm not quite sure if they were trying to appeal to like millennial nostalgia for the old Oregon Trail game or not, but the idea that, yes, people have been, moving from place to place for generations and centuries, so why should this be any different? It's definitely not Conestoga wagon style at this point in time, and frankly, ever so more perilous. They're not traipsing through totally unoccupied areas. I mean, we've had the conversations in the past about caravans, those things. This is more of a constant stream, is to my understanding what we're dealing with here, which is why I think it was brought up last week, the whole concept and terminology of caravan, why they weren't hearing about that, because it kind of doesn't apply in this case, because a caravan implies a start and an end, and this just seems to be continuous is part of the problem we're seeing here. But yeah, trying to go with those previous models or in considerations of migration, and part of it is definitely not applicable here, because yes, there are more higher tech things involved in it, but also a whole lot more prey. And I'm not talking about the wolves or the natives in the previous ones, where in the previous version, Oregon Trail I'm talking about. And we're talking about people who have serious, devious, and at very best dubious motivations, whether it comes from the coyotes doing it or the ones who are then further preying on it. So yeah, it's bad. Barbara Carrasco, to that point, I had another comment here saying that there was an interview with an illegal immigrant that stated, we can't imagine how many more are coming. That's frightening, and our leaders better be prepared. We've been told they've been preparing for months. I'd say they didn't do a very good job. It was all reactive rather than proactive 2 weeks ago. Yeah, anytime you say bring it on, how well does that ever work out, either in popular media or in history? I'm just going to say it doesn't. I will say one thing that comes up here that I would like to see maybe more support for the federal agents that are doing this work. But in terms of advocating for them, as you kind of referenced in your call, I'm not really sure what place or possibility there really is for local leaders, because I'm still going to place any blame that comes for the organizations, the entities, the agencies we're talking about here at the leadership level. When you're talking about, not even regionally, but when we start getting into, Department of Homeland Security, whether it be, the department heads or the Department of Homeland Security Undersecretary. I mean, Mayorkas is a well-known phrase to a lot of people and name to us here. And so the way they're dealing with it, I think the blame and the resolution of it falls strictly on them. Because, again, as we get into federal and international response, it's not a whole lot that I can really see local leaders doing here, just on part of that, but also to the idea of federal jobs being created. As I think Kathy Codry said a little bit earlier, the phrase she's concerned about, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And the other parts of it. Also, I mean, really, if there is profit being generated from government enterprises, it then raises the question, okay, why shouldn't that be done privately to get rid of that expense and have it be not part of, another phrase I think about, the bureaucracy is being expanded to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. A whole lot with that here. A lot of comments coming on there. RJ about the also commenting on what's going on with YouTube. We're trying, but we're going to see what our best part of it is here. And Steve Ivy also chiming on with us there. Marky Bandingo also saying that been in the hospital for a while. Hope you're feeling better. Saying now I can walk and listen to my favorite show. No AM radio at Providence and no Wi-Fi either. Another tidal wave migrants will break is frightening. Him going on to say, well, glad you're feeling somewhat better. Glad you're able to get to it. No Wi-Fi. That's interesting that it's not available to patients there, but, well, I guess I'm glad I haven't been in a hospital lately, knock on wood. Let's get to those phone calls again, because we do take those at this point during the show. So that number to call if you want to get on the line here is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. James Radcliffe also chiming in saying that it's been over 5 million have illegally crossed now. It depends on the time period you're talking about, because if you're just talking the last 2 years, even, I know we're talking about that, 2.3 million potentially by the end of this month as we're coming up on, or what was in the previous year, about 1.7. Yes, the arrests and encounters, depending on how you look at it, could number that much. But some of these cases, and a lot of these cases, each arrest does not indicate an individual or discrete different person. Sometimes it's multiple people, particularly given the way the fallback of Title 42 as the kind of only real immigration proceeding has been going on for. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines here. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Frankie with Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Hot diggity dog. Oh, boy. You're back on the radio. This is so exciting. Almost exciting as Jesus asking the Bubba ride from me back to Jerusalem. And talking about Jesus, by the way, did you hear what that Orange Julius nutjob said? He said to the whole world that he's the most second favorite person behind Jesus. Now, what kind of a nutjob said something like that? I ask you. That was rhetorical. Now, I know that you like to talk about local issues. I know that. All right? So, I got a local issue. And now, okay, it's not exactly local. It's in Texas, though, which is as close as local as I can get. You got this guy, this representative fellow, the guy that wears the patch on his eyeball, right? And he went out and said that these nut job, far-right whack jobs, like Muggery Thuggery Taylor, this nut guts guy, this bullboard broad, a bunch of nut jobs. Now, I ask you, and everybody else out there, Barbara and Tony and Andrew and Befuddled Ben, when are you people going to get on this case and call him a rhino? That's the first thing I want to say. What do you got to say about that?
You're talking about Dan Crenshaw here, right? I'm assuming?
Yes, that's who he is. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to make sure we're talking about the right one here, as RJ also pointing out. Previous guests on the show, I'll just add as well, and you can always go back and see our previous episodes that we've had up on, again, Facebook and YouTube more recently. But, okay, so, yeah, I mean, he's been an interesting and polarizing figure even with his own party. So the calling him of a rhino, I mean, that's more or less what we talked about when we got the chance to talk with him. What is that, last year at this point? Yeah, it sounds about right. So, I mean, he's always interesting in his own statements, never quite toes the party line, I would say. So, I mean, he's been often, it even had some censure pushed against him in certain ways. So I guess in order to answer to your question, I'm not surprised. Let me put it that way.
Well, okay. I like the way you responded to that. Well, let me just add this. It's been an exciting week, and because all kinds of terrible things are going wrong for the Donnie Dotard Orange Julius. He is in such deep doo-doo. I mean, he's the bottom of a septic tank, for crying out loud. And then finally, what I want to say to all of you out there in the Southwest border region, especially El Paso, Texas, let's go, Emma Parker, get her back in school. What do you think of that, befuddled Ben? That's all I want to say.
All right. Well, thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. You have a good one there.
All right.
All right. Just want to do some more of the comments coming up here. Some interesting comments about commentary. And RJ responding to that actually right after we got there. RJ calling, I do believe, referring to Dan Crenshaw there. He's a total rhino neocon. So I'm saying that there is a level of commentary going on out there about him, about that. And some other nicknames and things flying around here. One of the comments coming about Kathy Codry also mentioning elections have consequences, absolutely, in a variety of ways, and why we will be getting more into announcing what we're going to be doing with our election coverage coming up here, so stay tuned for that. Tell you what, we got to take that next break now. We're coming back, we'll get to more calls on the line, more of the points that we get to, more of the discussion on everything that affects us here in the borderland and beyond, of course. So if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso Freeway is looking crash-free right now. The biggest delay is on the Liberty Expressway eastbound from the 54 Gateway to the Loop with 5-minute delays. Lower Valley southbound on the Loop at Pan American. The right lane is partially blocked. Montana Avenue west of Chelsea, an accident with police on the scene. And El Paso fires partially blocking the right shoulder on Gateway North at Macomb Street. Kerry Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
It's baffling to think that 1/3 of America was for the revolution, 1/3 against, and 1/3 just didn't want to pick a side. Families were torn apart, like Ben Franklin's. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Here's my card.
I order takeout, use my card. And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low fixed-rate credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream from $5,000 to $100,000 and pay off those credit card balances. Apply online, and you could get your money as soon as the day you apply. The average credit card company charges over 19% APR, but with Lightstream, you can get a fixed rate as low as 5.73% APR with autopay and excellent credit.
Now I can pay off my high-interest credit cards and save money with a much lower rate.
Apply today at lightstream.com/radio and get an additional interest rate discount. That's lightstream.com/radio. Lightstream.com/radio.
Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 5.73% APR to 19.99% APR and includes 0.5% autopay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/radio for more information.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-828-5242 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-828-5242. That's 800-828-5242. What do you have to lose? Call 800-828-5242. Again, 800-828-5242.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube. Also the Twitch stream, Twitter, a bunch of different ones here. Point is, if you want to make your comment or at least catch the show, you're welcome to do so in those fashions. Plus, we take those comments such as a whole lot of comments. Austin Redfearn saying, before we go back on the segment here, Mexicans rightly claim that drugs coming to the U.S. through Mexico, it's because it's easy money, and the U.S. is a huge consumer. They're absolutely right. I've heard some folks blame Mexico for supporting the drug flow. It's just a lot of money. I mean, I'm not saying that someone asking for illegal drugs that the person provide them is blameless, but there's also, you got to start with the fact that someone's wanting them and a market is developed. And I know that a lot of the compunction of this country has been on the kind of punitive aspect of, lock them up, throw away the key kind of idea. But I found what has been, at least the way I look at it internationally, there are a lot of international examples when it comes to that, the idea of treating it as probably what it closer is to as a mental disorder at that point. I mean, addiction lives in the brain, and that doesn't mean it's any less real for those experiencing it. So doing that, I would think, and doing it effectively, very specifically, because sure, it may be fun to think about it punitively, just, you get rid of them all off the streets and we'll deal with it, it'll be fine. Not exactly how that works, but that would do a good job, a good point, I would think, to undercutting the market for it. But I'm not exactly an expert on these things here. Marky Mandingo over on the Facebook also saying we have to get all our friends and neighbors to the polls, must crush them in November, or become a regional party, or become fake Democrats, I think he's trying to say, or the version of it he says, or so we won't be exposed. Interesting, different possible plans there for you. Not going to say that I'm going to follow you on exactly any of those, but I'll definitely agree with you on the first point of going out to the polls and voting. Regardless, like, again, gonna absolutely prefer educated, informed, knowledgeable voters go out here, but at this point we just need people to go vote. So take your friends, neighbors, everyone that is eligible to vote, and go vote. Anyway, let's get back to those phone lines. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. Regarding this immigration problem, my question is how come the Mexican government is not doing more to stop these people at their southern border?
Well, simple answer here is that, well, again, it's simple in air quotes because nothing really involving this is simple, but we've talked about it kind of in piecemeal over recent months even. There's been this phenomenon called this ant migration, where essentially what it seems like is that the official Mexican policy, well, not official, but the policy in place and actually being activated is closer to what it was pre-2016 than what was in place during the Trump administration, of them actually having, like, even on their border with like Guatemala, Belize, etc., having enforcement to more of a, as long as you don't stop here, because that was pretty much always the way it was up until, again, always in air quotes again, because this is constantly shifted, but really the position of the Mexican government had always been that as long as you're not stopping here, because Mexican immigration laws, as has often been pointed out, are pretty draconian in terms of the requirements and what it takes to successfully navigate them. But so as long as you move through and don't become our problem was kind of the underlying lesson that I take away from it, that, just keep moving, then fine, whatever, keep going. And so it seems that, again, from reports I found from either previous guests on the show, from, say, with like the Center for Immigration Studies or other people we've talked with and people I follow, that, again, the term ant-migration, that essentially there is this tacit approval, even with sometimes documentation involved with it, but not this kind of big, like, yeah, do whatever as long as you don't stop here, public statements. That seems to be part of the puzzle that you're trying to get the full picture of.
Yes. Also, probably it is also probably due to the fact that Biden has not threatened to take away their economic aid.
That too. I mean, okay, so I think Mexico, just in the official response, and what we saw from the complete realignment of the Guardia Nacional, the Mexican National Guard, into essentially a border security force was that, yes, that was effective in its own right, but also you got to remember, whenever we talk about the government of Mexico, there are many good things, there are many bad things about Mexico and its response here, but they often have a lack of interdiction capability. And this one still kind of blows my mind that essentially, whenever you think about it, if someone were to, say, try to unauthorized flight within U.S. airspace, like coming from internationally, how there would probably be fighter jets scrambled and, things dealt with and them up on radar. Mexico, to my last understanding, the last time I really delved into this, simply does not have that capability. Like they do not have that kind of ability. I mean, whether they actually have the aircraft or not is another question, but then ready on standby. So their interdiction availability is not really a part of the government response at really any level, to my understanding, whether it be on the air, like I'm talking about, or on the ground, as is more specific with this. So I think it's been kind of a return to form, a falling back onto old habits kind of situation here. Not necessarily trying to ascribe any further political goals to it, but I'm sure those are probably built in as well.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on that. In other words, what it boils down to is they just don't give a rat's butt.
Yeah, probably there's more than a few people involved in that. Is like, why is this our problem? They don't want to stop here anyway. So I'm sure there are more than a few officials and bureaucrats in that situation that are like, yeah, why should we care? This is not our problem. It's probably a decently common sentiment, if I'm assuming anything.
Yes, and it's also evident over here that this administration has no concern and it has no intention of stopping this flow. And one piece of evidence or fact that proves that is their this funding for, what is it, 85,000, the 65,000 IRS agents, and no funding to Border Patrol, no for extra agents.
Yeah, I think there's basically been intimations along the lines of, well, this will get more funding for those kind of things here, but it's not going to hold my breath on that actually turning out that way. Plus, I mean, the training videos supposedly of these armed IRS agents that leave, I was pretty sure it was parody at first, but apparently isn't. It leaves a lot to be desired on considering that being effective in any way besides just ticking people off. But yeah, I really kind of put this at the feet of particularly those in leadership of these agencies of not doing the advocating, doing the fighting of it, and essentially letting themselves be the guinea pigs for policy as opposed to it coming out. I mean, the whole pillars speech that we heard Mayorkas make, gosh, what was that, about 6 months ago at this point? Yeah. I mean, he's pretty much being said that you're the one who's going to put this out, even though you would think that would be top line policy in my expectations anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this much. I'm wondering where they're going to find the people for this cadre of IRS agents, because I mean, you need to have at least a college degree, and you need to have a degree in accounting, and it's just difficult. It's just difficult to find that type of individual. I mean, same thing with the FBI. I mean, you can have 50 candidates for the one FBI position, and you're probably only going to get one qualified after they pass all the background checks and qualifications, after they weed everybody out. But that's about what it amounts to, 1 in 50.
Yeah, I don't think exactly the whole, to use a dated phrase, I know, the G-Man model to this new set of IRS agents. I don't think that's the real guiding concept going on there.
Yeah. In other words, well, like I said, some of these people coming out from universities, well, put it this way, they ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah, or the sharpest crayon in the box, another way to put it. RJ putting it one other way, pithily as always. I appreciate nerds with guns, which, I mean, there's a part of it there, but also, I mean, the way it's been proposed here, and that it'll totally handshake promise only go against those making over, what is it, $400,000 a year. Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one either.
Neither do I. Anyway, I turn the mic over to you. Have a good evening.
Appreciate it. You thanks for the point in the call. Have a great one there as well. All right, we'll go ahead and take that next break now. We go, of course, have that phone line open if you want to squeeze on the line. Some availability there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 News Update. We're working to learn more after police detained 2 people in connection to a shooting in the Lower Valley. It happened just before 6 o'clock yesterday evening near I-10 and Sumac Drive. Police say no one was injured in this incident and no arrests have been made. There's no word yet on whether the 2 people who were detained will face any charges. Meantime, police say 1 person is dead after a crash on El Paso's east side. It happened on Montana and Admiral near Hawkins Park around 2 a.m. yesterday. Police say the person killed was on foot when they were hit by a car. There's no word yet on that person's identity or what may have led to this crash. Of course, always remember, you can stay up to date with what's happening in our area and across the nation, all by signing up for our CBS4 newsletter. It's easy and it's free, and we'll send it straight on over to your inbox. Just head to cbs4local.com/sign-up to get started. I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS4 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
El Paso Fire is responding to an injury accident I-10 eastbound at Paisano Chelsea exit. Slow traffic on the 10 eastbound from Wyoming to the downtown exits to Paisano Drive with 7-minute delays. And later tonight, starting at 9 o'clock, I-10 eastbound lanes will be closed at red for road work. Detours will be set up for South Desert Boulevard till 5 tomorrow morning. Carrie Edwards, El Paso Traffic.
After a few showers and storms today, we'll start to see more sunshine as we head into the middle part of the work week. Your forecast for tonight calls for partly cloudy skies with a 10% chance for a shower or thunderstorm. Temperatures will also cool into the lower 60s by tomorrow morning. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about rain prospects for the rest of the week, plus how long these slightly cooler temperatures last. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
Listen to Red Pilled America's multi-part series on Richard Nixon. It's an in-depth look into why the media in Hollywood are so obsessed with him and goes a long way in explaining what Watergate was really about. Listen to Red Pilled America on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Stop going it alone for recruiting and staffing. Choose a local expert. Hiring is about getting to know people and not algorithms. So let the people at Express Employment Professionals hire for you. Visit expresspros.com to find the office near you. This report is sponsored by expresspros.com.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Up on all of those here, even if we have some of the potential modifications we might have to make on the horizon, like we talked about here. But some of the comments here saying Louis Pinado saying civil service is a haven for incompetence and corruption, and James Holmes saying that it seems alphabet agencies were all vulnerable to corruption. I mean, there is nothing designed by man that is not, immune to the vagaries of man itself here, being referred to in the global and in terms of mankind sense. It's one of the reasons the whole day of checks and balances within government were put into place, and why, again, sunshine, transparency is about the best we can hope for in terms of keeping that from going away, because it's only kind of the dark corners where people cannot be able to investigate these things, that these are allowed to fester. So that's why knowing about it here are important, I definitely have to say, as well as James Radcliffe articulating a different concern here, another drug problem when cocaine or heroin is mixed with xylazine, which is one I'll admit I'm not familiar with. Continuing on with his comment here, a non-opioid muscle relaxant causes ulcerative scars that are necrotic, and those that take this risk amputation or death. See, this is kind of getting to the point where I'm talking about the mental health response necessary for those that are users of this kind of stuff. And reminded of, what was it, a crocodile that I want to say it was sourced out of Russia primarily, that, yeah, could lead to you having like the flesh fall away without getting too graphic with it. And to think that someone would be needing to keep using that as opposed to seeing that, or remember one night back in college, we all had the brilliant idea. Someone elaborated on the idea of, hey, this has been a fun night. Want to ruin it? And we did a group watching of Requiem for a Dream, which, yes, as promised, kind of ruined the whole vibe for the evening and the fun time we had been having. We weren't using drugs at the time, but seeing someone lose their arm because of injecting intravenous drugs is not a good way to deal with any evening without any substances involved at all here. So that's why, I mean, sure, dealing with the actual demand for it would probably go a long way to dealing with the situation, but it's difficult. None of this stuff is simple, and anyone really trying to put forth the simple answers to it. We just got to do this and it'll be fine. Yeah, they're definitely trying to try to deal with it or try to sell you something about it. So let's interesting comments coming in there. Let's go back to those phone lines again. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have James Radcliffe, I think, confirming what I was saying there, that Russian drug is basically injecting yourself with kerosene or gasoline. And like, yeah, you or I, that sounds pretty insane, and yet someone's doing it and would keep doing it. So there's definitely a lot wrong that needs to be addressed there. Anyway, back to the phone lines, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to comment, you mentioned Mexico has pretty draconian immigration laws, and that's not just Mexico. That's really most countries in the world have pretty strict immigration laws. I lived in another country for a while, and I, due to some paperwork issues, overstayed my visa, I think 10 days. And each day that I stayed over my visa, I had a fine. I basically got kicked out of the country and had to go to an embassy outside of the country, reapply for my visa in order to get back in, because I was working overseas. So they're pretty strict. And, the explanation that I was given is that, my job that I had over there it could potentially go to one of their own citizens. So they restrict the number of work visas that they allow over there, because they're trying to protect their own workforce and make sure that foreigners weren't taking their jobs, basically. So that was the explanation that I was given, and because they're wanting to protect their own citizens, which I think is probably a reasonable thing to do. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I think that there's, two potential reasons why an administration would not want to enforce immigration law or allow this to happen. One is incompetence, and the other one is it's being done on purpose. And if it's being done on purpose, the possibility exists that, there's a national debt for every person essentially who lives in the United States. It's $93,000 per person that's a national debt. And immigrants tend to have a higher birth rate. So if they want to increase the population, they're not going to stop spending anytime soon, I don't think. So our national debt's going to keep going up. They want to spread that debt across a larger population, and so they can kind of put that debt on the little guys, so to speak. So, because $93,000 per person, the national debt right now, that's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Per person. If they could increase the population, import cheap labor, and the elites do much, much better when things are stacked that direction. Again, that's just my theory. They haven't come out and literally said that, but it's just something to think about.
It's an interesting way you put that here because it sounds substantially similar in completely different factors and terms with it, but essentially the same concept that has been put forth as kind of maybe underlying, again, not official statements, much like you said for this year, but the idea of the national debt being dealt with as trying to essentially outgrow it. And what I mean by that is not necessarily grow the economy or do that, but when we're looking at the factors that have led to the economic situation we're in now, including specifically inflation, that essentially if you keep the national debt more or less the same, but the money is a lot cheaper, you've effectively made the debt cheaper. So essentially trying to make it so that it's not as significant otherwise as it would be. And there has been, some theorists and economists I follow that have posited that as essentially the maybe not real like statement kind of thinking like you're talking about, the background, the back burner, the back of mind thinking for a lot of the official response that has come economically speaking about trying to make it so that by essentially making the dollar worth less, that doesn't necessarily change the amount of the national debt, but it makes it so that it would be easier to like borrow that money or get rid of it or dispense with it that way as a way of keeping it. I don't think it's actually focused on eliminating the national debt because that is a generational problem at this point. So any your office holder's term will not be able to encompass that response and successfully see it through. But then essentially that's the idea. Outgrow it, make it so insignificant that we can keep it stable, if not actually eliminate it.
Right. And like you said, they may not say, oh, we're doing this on purpose, but hey, this is happening. And so here's the bright side. And that can go to illegal immigration and that can go to inflation. And, I have a hard time believing that these people are actually that incompetent and actually that stupid, because the policies that they put in place are the exact policies that you would do if you wanted these things to happen, whether it be inflation or illegal immigration. I don't think they're that stupid. I do think it's done on purpose. That's my opinion. And those are the kind of reasons why I think they're doing it. But those are my thoughts. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. Yep. All right, have a good one there. I guess two other thoughts do occur to me as well. There's been kind of more in the realm of theory at this point, but it's persuasive in its own right. The idea of population collapse, or at least a population crisis potentially coming. You may have heard in recent years-ish about actually depopulation happening in some areas, particularly of like Europe, Japan comes to mind, and even been posited in the U.S. Essentially, the birth rate not keeping up with the actual the population. That it takes, like 1.1, 1.3 births per person in order to, or per, those able to get, per productive couple, essentially, in order to see the replacement of it. And because, of course, not everyone is going to get pregnant and give birth, so it's kind of put on those that actually are going to. And so we've seen that go underwater in some places. Not that no one is, but to go completely far afield on this, I think it was in the Scandinavian area. I want to say it was Norway, but in that region, certainly, there was actually an official government ad campaign asking for essentially pensioners, retirees, those that have children, to send those children on vacation if they're married, because they had done a study about the fact that essentially getting it on and conception having a lot more went on vacation than it did just regularly in normal rates in the country. Like the rate was significant enough, like a 25% or a 50% increase, something like that. They actually did an ad campaign saying, want a grandchild? Send your kids and their spouses out of the country on a vacation, and it might happen better. So that's not that's a really strange example, I know, but oftentimes when you hear these economic talks going on about, population dynamics, demographics, those kind of things, talking about that it's often stated very matter-of-factly, which is a little bit weird the first time you see it. It's stated that, yes, if a country is not able to produce its own workforce, it has to be imported. As if we're talking about, oh, well, you're not able to grow bananas in your country, you got to import them. It's said in that kind of same tone and tenor, which is a really weird thing, given that we're talking not just about human beings, but about the population of a country and the makeup that is going to be in it, and not taking into consideration, at least in that statement anyway, any of the factors going into it about how that immigration would occur. Another international example that comes to mind for me was to your earlier point there, Stephen, about needing to import labor as part of it. There's actually a good example that comes to mind for me is Germany, and specifically with Turkish immigrants. That it's not even just a manual labor force, but also somewhat uneducated, somewhat like in IT services, those kind of things. Not solely, but it's very much there a lot. So much that some foods that have been associated with like a doner kebab. We've had a couple places in town that have opened up serving that. It's technically Turkish in origin, but it became so prevalent in a lot of places that it was considered, a German dish at this point, or at least, the way pizza is considered, or at least pizza we get here is considered an American dish in that way. Yeah, Flaco Jimenez with it is saying, do it for your country. I don't think that was a tagline on that ad campaign, but it could have been. But so in the Turkish consideration and with Germany, essentially they were wanting people to come there, work, and then go back. And the example I gave of the food there, the integration that was happening, but not technically possible, the actual then paths to then stay there and like become a part of the country were specifically limited. So also going to your draconian immigration policies. And that was becoming a major civil unrest issue within Germany, even before this recent decade and all of the other challenges that have come across. So immigration is a fraught topic at any level and at any basis, much less when they're dealing with the whole, North and Sub-Saharan Africa immigration issues they got over there and what happened with Syria. They got others, so it's not a perfect, like, one-to-one, apples-to-apples comparison and example, but similarities exist that can be looked at about, okay, how did they actually then deal with it, meet the needs, and continue to be able to function while not necessarily destroying anything in the process? Part of the conversation going on there. And so a lot of comments coming in about those kind of things. Tell you what, we got to take that last break right now. We'll get to some more of the comments. And, of course, I'll tell you we got coming up for you on the show here. So all that after this last break here of the hour, coming back briefly with more Talk El Paso. So stay tuned after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Paisano Drive exit, a multi-vehicle crash there, but everything is off to the left. It's causing some slowing, though, downtown on the 10 eastbound. Back to the downtown exits, Wyoming Avenue, it's a 12-minute delay. Gateway North at Trans Mountain, a crash there. It's got a truck blocking the right turn only lane, stay to the left. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast, what would happen to you if you bought a firearm the same way that Hunter Biden purchased his? There's a good chance you'd be in jail right now. I'll explain why. Make sure you download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
With so many real estate agents to choose from, how do you find the best one? Hi, it's Glenn Beck. One key is just looking for the investment that an agent is willing to make to get your home sold. Brian Birds with eXp Realty and his team have a marketing budget 25 times higher than the average agent's annual income. This means your home gets maximum exposure because it's marketed to the widest possible audience and gets you the highest possible sales price. Brian is so confident in his ability to sell your home fast and for more money that he's willing to put his own money on the line. If your home doesn't sell at the price and deadline you agreed to, he'll buy it from you himself. I'm not going to find another real estate agent in El Paso who is that invested in getting your home sold. He's the only one I'd call. Google Brian Birds. That's Brian, B-U-R-D-S. Read over 400 five-star reviews because I'm not the only one who knows you should call Brian Birds. Google Brian Birds or just check out brianbirds.com.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-828-5242 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-828-5242. That's 800-828-5242. What do you have to lose? Call 800-828-5242. Again, 800-828-5242.
I'll never forget the call that my only son had been killed instantly by a distracted driver on her cell phone. Please hang up and drive.
Heads up, Texas. Using your phone behind the wheel can be deadly. Talk, text, crash. Brought to you by TxDOT.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. A couple of things we're working on for y'all. Of course, getting closer to our election coverage. Just know that if you've got a candidate or anyone else that you're working with out there, don't drop us a line here. Email address Andrew Polk at iHeartMedia.com. No J in it there. I know I didn't set the address. It was just our company convention. Yeah, Andrew Polk at iHeartMedia.com. We're reaching out to some. We got some lists coming up because we're going to be launching into our election coverage pretty much starting next month. So coming up. So stay tuned for all of that. Also going to be talking more with some of our food banks locally, those situations, what the response is, and what the need still is here. We've had some questions come up about that. We'll delve into it. Plus, hopefully talking more about the roadways, because I know that's a lot of concern for probably a majority of our listening audience. Even if you're not on the roads right now, odds are you are. So that's why I'm saying, if you interact with the show too so safely. Whole lot more, of course, checking with our news partners and more on the big stories going on. Okay. Some of the comments already coming in there, points being made. Appreciate that. Big. And that's going to pretty much do it for us here today. Get a lot more to come. And just, again, make your plan to go vote. As we talk about all these candidates, all these issues, people making those, exhortations to actually go out and do the voting. Please make your plan to go vote. It's the one thing just to say, go vote, or I'm going to vote, or voting. Make your plan. Plan out where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and plan the buddy that you're going to maybe bring with you, because that's a very important thing. Actually following through with it is often the part where a lot of people fall flat. So just make your plan and then see it through, because if you don't, things will continue just on like they have been. So please make your plan and plan to actually see it through. That'll about do it for us here today. Again, I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you to everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. That way we do things here is, the reason we keep doing it. Having those conversations, we'll keep doing it for as long as we're allowed to. And all the places we are, we keep fighting for it. So stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Paisano Drive, multi-vehicle accident has got all vehicles up on the left shoulder, but there's still enough to cause a backup. 13-minute delays downtown on the 10 eastbound from Wyoming, downtown exits to Paisano Drive. A crash on Gateway North at Trans Mountain. A truck is blocking 2 left lanes, stay to the right. Injury accident, Geronimo Drive at the 10 Gateway. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Kick off your season with a win at Sun & Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sun & Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. We need trades, and we need them now. Even if you owe thousands more than what your vehicle is worth, we want it. So trade today and upgrade today for less.
For a limited time, get 0 APR for 72 months on new 2022 Ram trucks and on the all-new 2022 full-size Wagoneer SUV with third-row seating. Plus, during Jeep Adventure Days, get $4,000 off MSRP on select new Jeep Gladiators. Worried about your credit? Forget about it. We've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit. Or even if you're